Hi, Graham from Affordable Leather Products here. I've been asked to do a short presentation on negotiation and consent in BDSM, so here it is. First of all, I have to say that this is, of course, my personal take on the subject. There is no one true way of doing negotiation and consent in BDSM. So if someone says to you, you must do this or you can't do that, with all due respect to them, they're wrong. As long as it's consent between adults and they're all aware of what they're doing and they're capable of making an informed decision, there's no problem with someone doing it differently from someone else. What I'm going to do is put up some slides of what I'm talking about and discuss them as we go along. I hope you find this interesting and useful. To start off with, I need to talk about the importance of consent and negotiation in BDSM. BDSM should be a mutually enjoyable activity between two or more consenting adults. You can do it on your own, but that's not quite so much fun. Also, it's rather difficult to breach your own consent. This is not a challenge. Whatever the case in the number of participants, everyone involved should have agreed to take part in a scene and nobody should be made to do anything they don't want to, at least not without prior agreement. Remember, if activities take place without someone's consent, then that's no longer consensual BDSM, that's abuse, and theoretically that could involve criminal proceedings. So it's a really good idea to make sure everyone agrees. It's also a good idea to make sure that everyone has some idea of what everyone is expecting from the scene, what's going to happen, and what the limits are. A long time ago, when I first started in BDSM, I was playing with a girlfriend and we both had different ideas about what was going to happen in a scene and where it was going to go. We ended up basically both trying to steer it in different directions, and frankly, the whole thing fell to pieces. Fortunately, we managed to discuss what the problem was, and next time we played, it went an awful lot better. If you've not played with someone before, it's a good idea to ask them whether they have any medical conditions or other health problems which might cause an issue during a scene. For instance, if someone has asthma, you've got to think, what would you do if they had an attack during the scene? Do they have an inhaler to hand? And do you need to know anything about administering it if necessary? Similarly, if someone suffers from allergies and has a bad reaction to something you're playing with, do they have an EpiPen and do you know what to do with it? It's also a very good idea to make sure that you have agreed safe words or safe signs before you start a scene off. Generally, I recommend the traffic light system, as in green, amber and red, where green is go ahead, which is also good for a check-in. If you're worried that someone might be getting a bit too deep into subspace, you can ask them what their check-in safe word is. If they say green, not a problem, carry on. If they don't respond or they say anything else, start checking and see what's actually going wrong. Amber is for slow down, you're getting close to a limit, this is okay, but no further please. And red means stop, something isn't right, I don't like this, please stop doing that and do something else. There is also red, 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 which is emergency stop, something has gone wrong, stop the whole scene right now. It could be simple as someone's got a cramp, it could be they're getting scared, whatever the situation, if they use that, everything stops. You immediately get them out of any bondage or do whatever is necessary to get things back under control. Once the situation is safe and normality has been re-established, cuddle your partner, wrap them in a blanket, give them a cup of tea, give them something sweet to eat, whatever is necessary to help them calm down. Once your partner has recovered, take time to sit down, talk about what went wrong and how to make sure that it doesn't happen again. If you're using gags, then you can't obviously use safe words, so you can use finger signals, 1 finger for green, 2 finger for amber, 3 fingers for red, 5 fingers repeatedly, red, 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 emergency stop. Alternatively, you can give someone a small bell, a bunch of keys, a ball, something like that to hold in their hand. If they drop that, if they jingle the keys or rattle the bell, whatever, it means they need you to pay attention to them, something's going wrong. Again, let's talk about this. It's not obligatory to use safe words and safe signals, although it's a good idea to make sure you decide whether you're going to use safe words or signals before you start a scene. These aren't necessary. It can be perfectly acceptable simply for you to have discussions with your play partner whilst the scene is going on, exactly how they're enjoying it, whether they want you to do something different, whether they want you to do something harder, gentler, swap to a different activity. On the other hand, if you want to do slightly more formal, or for instance your play partner wants to be able to yell help, no, stop, mercy and so on like that, then obviously you need some way to know whether they're actually being serious or they're doing it as part of a scene. If you play regularly with one partner and you're familiar with their reactions and how they behave in certain situations, it's not necessary to use safe words because you can just read from their physical responses how they're actually reacting to what you're doing to them. Don't forget, of course, that tops can also safe word too. If you think a scene is going too far, if you think things are getting out of hand, if you're not sure that your submissive, your recipient, your bottom is responding properly, they may have just completely dropped right into subspace and not been aware that they're actually suffering physical harm, then the top can stop and say, okay, we're going to call a halt to this and talk about it and see what's going on. Don't be afraid of negotiation. Negotiation is useful for not only understanding what's going to happen in a scene, but also it may give you ideas that you've not even thought of before. When you're talking to someone and they say, oh, what about this? Or have you tried that? Or maybe we could do something like whatever. And you go, ah, that was an interesting idea. Yes, okay, we can use that in a future scene. But by the same token, never be afraid to say no. Don't get coerced into something, anything that you're not comfortable with. If you don't like it, don't do it. Next thing I want to touch on is the classic safe, sane and consensual. These are three fundamental guidelines for BDSM, although some people prefer the concept of RAC or risk-aware consensual kink. Either way, it's a way of making sure that you're aware of what the potential problems are with what you're going to do and making sure that everyone has the capability to make informed decisions about what's happening. Safe is thinking about what potential problems there are. If you're tying someone up with ropes and a knot gets stuck, do you have a pair of safety shears? Cut through the rope. Rope's cheap. Submissives aren't. Also, don't start something, a new idea in the middle of a scene. You may think in the middle of a scene, hey, here's a great idea, what if I do this? And then halfway through you realise actually it's not working out, something's gone wrong, and then you've got to try and sort that mess out on the fly. The concept of sane, if people are playing under the influence of drink or drugs, which I personally don't recommend, but it's your choice, what seems like a good idea at the time, again, can be something that can go wrong for you. And in the middle of the scene, this is not a good place to try and be sorting it out. Also, of course, if someone's under the influence of drink or drugs, they may consent to something which in the cold light of day they wouldn't actually do. And of course, consensual, negotiate and discuss activities beforehand. This can be something as simple as saying, okay, I want to be tied up and spanked, but I want to keep my underwear on. It can be, I want to be tied up in a particular way, but I need to get out if I suddenly feel I'm having a panic attack. Riskaware consensual kink is an alternative to safe, sane and consensual. It means that you know that there are risks involved in what you're going to do and you've already taken account of them and you've thought about what the problems could be. It's also a good idea to discuss soft limits and hard limits. Soft limits are if somebody doesn't like something but their top does, say, okay, I don't enjoy this, but if you want to do it, I will do it because you enjoy it. They enjoy the submission of being made to do something they don't enjoy. Hard limits are, this isn't going to happen in a scene, no way, no how. Don't enjoy this, don't like it, not going to do it for you. Don't try and make me do it because that's a breach of my consent. Remember, of course, that tops are always responsible for respecting their bottom's limits and shouldn't try to push them without prior agreement. Similarly, the bottom, the recipient, is the one who is always in final control. They're the one who can say stop and something stops. During the scene, you might want to use names or other words to describe the person on the receiving end. But if you're going to do this, please be aware that some of these words can have strong emotional or societal connotations. So calling someone bitch, slut, slave, sissy, and so on could be fine, could be an absolutely wonderful turn on for them, but they could also be highly offensive or even trigger memories of abuse. So please discuss these beforehand just to make sure you don't trip over something in the middle of the scene and the whole thing falls apart. You then have to take care of them and apologise deeply to them. I remember many years ago seeing a cartoon published by SM Pride which showed two leathermen in their harnesses, chaps, boots, etc. And one of them is on his knees in floods of tears and the other one is standing over him saying, "Look, I'm sorry, your taste in opera is fine, really." Now that's amusing, but also it makes a very valid point that something that might seem quite trivial to you might be very important to someone else. So please be careful when using such things in the middle of a scene, and always try to make sure that you ask about it beforehand. For more experienced players, or if you want to play with someone on an ongoing basis, you might want to use a negotiation document. These are lists of various BDSM activities, and you can state whether you've done such an activity, whether you want to do such an activity, and how much you want to do such an activity. There are various versions of this. Some are short, with only a couple of pages and a limited number of activities. Others are much longer and can list pretty much any BDSM activity you'd ever want to do, and also can include lists of body parts, everything from the top of the head to the soles of the feet, so you can state whether you want someone to concentrate on a part of your anatomy or avoid it entirely. I had one play partner. You could do almost anything to her, but whatever you do, don't touch her feet. Similarly, for those who don't know me, I have long hair and a ponytail. Now I love having someone grab hold of that and pull me around by it in the middle of a scene. But whatever you do, don't ever threaten to cut it because you will not see me for dust. It's a really good idea to know about such things before a scene starts rather than ruin one halfway through. A negotiation document allows you to find out about such things. Also, it gives you the opportunity to say, for instance, I would like to be threatened with this, but not actually do it. I would like to be, quote, forced, unquote, into it, or made to beg for it. In that I really want to do this, but I want you to make me say that I want you to do this to me. Another question you need to consider is, should you get involved in a BDSM scene with someone if you play with someone else already? And the answer to that is that it depends on your relationship with the other person. If nothing else, it can be polite and considerate to consider their point of view rather than coming up to them later and saying, oh, by the way, I did this with this person. The person you're in a relationship with might be entirely fine with this. On the other hand, they might consider this to be very disrespectful or indeed a threat to your existing relationship. Something else to consider in your negotiation is what sort of aftercare will be involved after the scene is over. Some people are quite happy to say, fine, okay, thank you very much, that was very nice, let's go our separate ways now. Other people might need cuddling, wrapping up in a blanket, feeding warm drinks, or just basically being allowed to sit alone and relax. Whatever the case is, obviously, knowing what the person is expecting beforehand is a better idea than just pushing them out the door and saying thank you very much, goodbye, if they need plenty of aftercare. It's also a good idea after a scene to have a discussion with the person you've been playing with and ask them simply, what do they enjoy about that scene? What do they feel could have been done differently? Was there something they would have liked to have been done that you didn't do? Especially if you're going to play with that person again. Even if you're not going to play again, it's always a good idea to get feedback on what you've done, simply because you can always learn something new from playing with a different person. That person might say, well, I liked this, but I'd prefer it if you didn't do that again, and next time you do this, perhaps you could do it in this way. Or maybe they might suggest, well, how about trying this next time? Or did you ever think about doing that? Of course, your recipient might also like some feedback on how they did during the scene. Whatever the feedback, it's nice to keep it constructive and helpful rather than criticising someone. Unless that's your preference, of course. You can find a longer version of this talk on our website at affordable-leather.co.uk/resources. This page also contains 2 negotiation documents which you can download and print off to use for your own scenes. There's also a list of useful books you can read, such as SM 101 by Jay Wiseman, the Topping Book and the Bottoming Book by Dossie Eason and Janet W. Hardy, and Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns by Molly Devon and Philip Miller. Well, that's the end of the talk. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that I've managed to teach you something useful. Don't forget that until we can see you again at the Real London Alternative Market at the Revolution Bar, you can buy from us online on our website at affordable-leather.co.uk/market, where you can see a selection of videos demonstrating some of our products. Until that time, stay in, stay safe, stay kinky.